I don't feel like I need to give the panel any real introduction because they've already spoke today and they should be very well recognized from across the weekend and historically. So I'll just turn the floor over to Howard, who will get us started with his World Cup experience.
Thank you, Matt. And if it looks strange, I'm talking to a microphone that's not actually amplifying my voice. It's just for the video, so it's not nothing more than that. So thank you for rejoining us. Sorry that this session has started after quite a sort of like a shortened lunch break. That's because it was Bibi, blah 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 blah. Never shuts up. Yeah, thank you for sticking with us on the last session. For those who were there for that one, we enjoyed delivering that and sharing the messages about the new laws of the game. And I'm delighted to join this panel. We sit here as officials who have all been to and officiated at World Cup finals, but we all started as new referees at some point in our lives, never ever dreaming that that would be possible. But it became a reality for the three of us. And I know both of these individuals pretty well, one a little bit better than the other. I know Joe the most. We spent some good nights in Brazil on that.
It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better.
No, what are you thinking about? I'm just thinking about watching games on the. Okay. But we're all. I can say one thing. I think we're all decent human beings. I think that's important. But we're all pretty regular people as well. We're nothing extraordinary. We share a passion for the game, but what that tells you is that really amazing things can happen to regular people in this sport. And when I cast my mind back to the start of my career, and these guys will be able to do the same, and I look back to when I passed my refereeing examination, which took place on the 19th of December 1989. I was 18 years of age. And I look back to that night. I suppose it was inevitable that there was somebody who was alive and well somewhere in the world that night who didn't know it at the time, but was going to go on to take charge of the FIFA World Cup final in 2010. And it turned out to be me. Unbelievable things really, really do happen when certain things fall into place and you make certain decisions and then you pursue a dream, if you like. And that journey from 1989 through to, on the 19th of December, through to the 11th of July 2010, it wasn't a straight journey that started out here and went to there as one big line of success and only success. It really was an up and down journey where situations happened in games that led me to feel like I wanted to quit because it was a painful experience, where I've gone home from a game and thrown my kit bag in the corner of the kitchen back at home and thought, that's it, I've had enough, I'm quitting, there's easier things to do than this. And then I've sort of like talked to people who care about me and wanted me to do well, and people like my father. And my dad would say, come on, get back on it, do it again. And because I had a passion for the game and by and large enjoyed what I did most of the time, I used to go back to my bag 2 days later, pick my boots up and clean them off, pack my kit and go out and do it the following week. And I was so glad that when I stood in the tunnel in South Africa before that World Cup final, I was glad that I'd gone back and done that each and every time, picked my bag back up and cleaned the boots and gone out and refereed the next week. Because if I'd just left the kit bag in the corner and not gone back to it, I would have been watching that game at home on TV as a fan, instead of achieving this unbelievable sort of like accolade of refereeing a World Cup final. So perseverance is really important. Perseverance within your careers, within your season, because you'll have ups and downs, and you'll have times where you're seeing the ball like a pea, and you'll have other times where you're seeing it like a huge beach ball and everything comes naturally. And I think that's the same for all of us in the game. I was speaking to Marius, one of the goalkeeping coaches, last night, and goalkeepers have similar situations. You have to work through those tough times. But they seem tougher to you than they seem to other people. And it's a bit like that when you're refereeing a game. When you look at a game from outside, it never looks as difficult as it feels from inside, in my experience. I had lots of really tough games. I thought, oh my goodness, this is really hard. And then when I watched it back, it wasn't so difficult. It didn't look so difficult, at least. So a few lessons there in terms of perseverance. Expect there to be difficult times. They won't look as bad from the outside as they feel to you. Persevere. Go back and pick your bag up again and clean your boots. Within a game itself, you'll have times within games that are hard. The worst thing you can do is hide. The worst thing you can do is stop doing the job you sent there to do. The worst thing you can do when it's difficult is think, okay, I'm going to intervene less because the game will get even harder. You'll start to let people down. So think about these words when you've got a difficult game. Think, this is normal. This happens. The worst thing I can do is start to hide. So stand up, put your shoulders back, and drive your way through to the finish line, to the final whistle. And you might not be brilliant, and you might not be perfect, but you'll get through the game in much better shape than you would do if you start to swallow the whistle. Because every time you swallow the whistle when you should blow it, the tempo gets higher. So just a few things I learned along that long journey. It started in '89. It took me 14 years to make it onto the Premier League as a referee, and another 7 years before I went to the World Cup in 2010. I started refereeing simply because I wasn't a very good footballer. I thought I was, and my dad said to me, he said, "You're not very good. Have you thought about doing some reffing?" I thought, I'm not that bad, surely. But I decided it would be nice to have some younger people refereeing. These days, there's a lot of young people in this room who look the part, who look athletic, look like they deserve to be on the field. It wasn't really that way back in the late 80s. And I thought it would be nice for there to be a younger referee. So I took the whistle up and started officiating. To give me some sort of like moral courage, I asked a colleague of mine from school, I was still doing my exams at school, to come with me. And we both set off on this journey, like an 8-week instructional course with an exam at the end on 19th of December, '89. And me and a guy called Matthew Page, we both passed our exam that day. And then in the new year, 1990, we took charge of our first games, junior games, under 11s football it was. That was the youngest that was being played at the time. In the second weekend, we both did a game again on the adjacent fields. And Matt, my friend Matt, who I'm still in contact with, had a confrontation with a parent who was like mouthing off on the sidelines. And Matt went over to say, "Can you please quieten down?" We were only 18, we're not that life experienced. And this parent said, "If you come any closer, I'm going to hit you." And Matt carried on speaking to him as he went towards him, and this parent hit Matt in the face and knocked him down. And that was the end of Matt's career. He had 2 games. Started with me, did 2 games. I went on to referee over 500 professional games and refereed in 51 countries. And it just shows how these small moments can change your life. If I'd have been hit in the face, I wouldn't be sat here now. So, there's so many things that can happen along the way that can prevent you from getting to the ultimate, I guess, that we're all trying to get to. My actual World Cup journey, I guess, like all of us, commences when we get put onto the international panel. For me, that happened in 2005, the same year as Bibi got onto the international panel as well. The really big break I got was coming here in 2007. I came here for the Under-20 World Cup finals, based in Toronto at the Intercontinental Hotel near the Rogers Centre. I got to meet Joe Fletcher at that tournament, and it was still, even now, looking back, the best 4 weeks of my entire refereeing career. We had all the trappings of a World Cup, senior World Cup event, but without that acute pressure of the real global spotlight that the actual World Cup brings. And it made us feel special. We felt special at that tournament. I flew to Edmonton twice. I flew to Montreal. I did 5 games in total, including the opening game in Montreal between Brazil and Poland. I did the semi-final in Edmonton between the Czech Republic and Austria, and then was present at the final when Argentina won the final with players like I think Aguero played and Di Maria and a few others who have really made massive careers for themselves. That made me realise what life on a FIFA tournament looked like. It made me realise as well that you get rewarded for what you put into this. I went with a team of myself, Darren Cann and Mike Malarkey. The biggest stroke of luck I ever had was that my birthday coincided more or less with theirs. We were born around the same time, and they were outstanding at what they did. Outstanding. They made me look really good. There used to be a cartoon on UK TV. It probably wasn't played in Canada, but it was called Hong Kong Fooey, #1 super guy. right? And Hong Kong Fooey was like this, I don't know what he was. I think it was like this cat, but he used to solve crimes. But actually, he didn't really solve them. He took the credit, but there was this other like sidekick who was very quiet in the background, a bit like Danger Mouse and Penfold and that sort of thing, you know. And he would solve the crimes. Hong Kong Fooey would get the praise. And I was like that with people like Darren Can. Dan would tell me in my earpiece, send him off. I'd go, bang, red card, fantastic decision. And I'd take the credit for it. Because he was one of those few people, and Mike was excellent as well, who were really talented at what they do. And I'm sat on the table with people like that as well, who've got a real instinct for it. And I also learned a few things on my journey to the World Cup. I learned that, so you've got to have a good team. You've got to be professional in everything you do. We gave 100% to everything that we did. We played hard, but we worked really hard as well at those tournaments to make us stand out. I also learned that you have to be a good person around those tournaments. You really do. You have to integrate when you mixing with officials from all over the world and keep learning all the way along. Even at that point, I wouldn't have expected to go to the 2010 World Cup, but things fell into place. For example, you need to be lucky. Something happened in Stuttgart in 2006 that opened up an opportunity for me. And Graham Paul refereed Croatia versus Australia and showed 3 yellow cards to Josip Simonic, which is a really sad thing to have to bring into my story, but it really was impactful because Graham would have undoubtedly have gone to the 2010 World Cup and would have been a big player there and possible for the final. But he made a mistake that lives with him to this day. Not one day goes by, and I speak to Graham still quite often, not one day goes by even now where somebody doesn't mention 3 yellow cards to Graham. For a guy who refereed nearly 1,000 professional games to a really high level as well. So you need things to fall into place. But then you can only take advantage of those situations when you've worked hard to do so. And I said yesterday, it's not about the will to win, it's about the will to prepare to win. So we were doing all of the hard yards to put us in the best shape to take advantage of anything that might fall our way. So we were lucky enough to go to a few tournaments in between. Euro 2008, when I upset an entire Polish nation who weren't happy with the penalty decision that I gave. We went to Confederations Cup and Under-17 World Cup as well in 2019, and then ultimately the invitation to go to the 2010 World Cup came along. And you know, other things fall into place. We're from 2 of us on this table are from a playing point of view, great footballing nations. 2 of us are, and I'm from England. So I knew that my time down in South Africa would be dictated by how well the England team did. I knew that if England went all the way to the final stages, I would be going home probably at week 4. So I packed for the full 6 weeks, thinking I'd be staying. People actually said, when you're at a tournament, do you support your national team? Because their journey impacts you. You can't go to the final stages if they're there. But we really were proper England fans. A football fan, I can't help it, And Darren Can was doing like a secret video dive in 2010 at the World Cup. And we've got a reunion coming up in July this year, 10 years on, to go back through some of those videos. It's going to be really nice to look at, how we look back then. But this is one of the clips I'm going to share with you. This is one of the things that he filmed. He filmed us watching England against Slovenia, which England won 1-0. Jermaine Defoe scored on about 70 minutes. It was a crappy performance, but they squeezed over the line. I do swear in this, I apologise. But you'll see how much, even though it could have affected our progress, how much we wanted England to win. I think this will play. So I'll go. About effing time, I said at the end. So that was our life, living together for 6 weeks, breathing, eating, loving football. Obviously, the story of then going on to do the final, having done three games that went pretty well. Darren and Mike were outstanding, got us the final. I guess somewhat unexpectedly, things happened in that tournament which opened the door for me. I mean, Jorge Lariondo, one of the greatest referees in the world, had the issue with the ball over the line for England against Germany when Lampard hit the bar. We had also, the same day, Carlos Tevez scored from a position that was yards offside, and the Italian assistant didn't pick it up, and the goal was given. And, you know, again, these were big players who were candidates for the World Cup final, who were put out of contention because of these things, and we just kept our head down and got through. So again, you need things to fall into place. But if FIFA didn't have trust in us to do the final, they wouldn't have assigned us to it, regardless of how these other people did. So we got to the final, and it turned out to be the longest and hardest 2 hours of my life. And I talked about it last year when I came to do the keynote. It was pretty intense. You know how games are going. You get that feeling when the game's in your pocket and you can look around and take in the atmosphere. And you also know when you're fighting for every decision. And I went into that game expecting it not to be so beautiful, but didn't expect it to be the battle it was. And one of the things I learned along my journey about digging in, about not hiding, I learned from a game that I did at Everton in 2004. I mentioned it last year. And it really came to pass in that final between Spain and Netherlands. You know, I had 2 yellow cards in the first 14 minutes. I remember saying to the 2 guys on the line, that'll settle things down nicely. 1 yellow card each. 2 more yellow cards in the next 5 minutes. I said to the guys, this is not going to plan. And they both said to me, dig in, don't hide. And we kind of did, but it was tough. It was really tough. And I've got videos here of like De Jong, or videos from half time, which we can share, but I think most people will have seen those. But yeah, so from starting out in 1989 to walking up those steps at the end of the 2010 final, having done the ultimate, I guess, was a journey that wasn't easy, but it's one that I would recommend anybody to try taking. And to persevere, pick your bag up each time, go out and do it again, and have the courage to put your dreams, whatever they might be, above the fears of failure, because there's a lot of people who want to knock what we do who would never do it themselves. So a little pot of history there for me. I'm going to hand over to Bibi. I know you've not heard from Bibi before, so her journey is amazing, and a little bit how she got to do the final in 2011 in Frankfurt.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you have heard a long story now where he had another coffee at lunchtime. You can see. So you heard some stories about like how we are doing our job and when we picked up the whistle. So in my case, it was when I was 16 years old, and guess what? My dad is a referee as well, and this is like how I became part of the game. And when I was 16, I did it for the joy, for the love of the game. And I was really passionate about like refereeing, about this challenge to go out there, dealing with people and taking decisions, like communication, learning the laws of the game, like use them on the field of play, adapt whatever happens, and be a little bit like part of, be flexible. Like, let's see what's gonna happen. You can prepare a lot, but you can't prepare everything. So you have to rely a little bit on your stomach feeling as well. And this helped me throughout the journey on the field and in my job as a police officer as well. So what I'm doing is like I'm dealing with people all the time. And guess what? The people, and that's the beauty of it, mostly they don't agree. So the only thing you can count off is that like half of the group is supporting your decision and the other half hates it. So this is what you can count on, and this is like what you always know when you're starting the battle, that you can't make everybody happy. And that's not my job. I'm not paid for this. So the self-confidence in believing in your own decisions, like in knowing that what you're doing, what you're presenting is all you can give, is different to players or teams or like 100-meter sprinter in the Olympics, because they are judged on the time. The fastest one gets the medal. And in refereeing, it's so different. You can only influence your own performance on the field. You cannot influence the results of the teams of your own country, for example. You cannot influence like other referee performances, and you can't influence political things going around. So the only thing you can focus on is like your own performance, what you have done to be best on the field of play. That's all you can do. And coming from, obviously, a different perspective, because I'm the only one with a ponytail here on stage. If you would have told me when I was 16 years old how the battles would like I have to face, I would not have taken the whistle. In Germany, we have about like 75,000 referees in total, and like 1,200 of them are female. And when I started the journey, like I haven't thought about like politically issues or like the equality question or anything like this. But of course, at some point in my career, I faced the challenge that women cannot do the same thing than men. Why? All that referees do is taking decisions on the field and dealing with people. So give me a reason why men can do it in a better way than women. Or like tall people can do it in a better way than small people. Or like no hair people can do it better than ponytail people. So, and that doesn't fit in my picture of the game. And I have to tell you that when I was starting, the only thing I really wanted to be, I wanted to be part of the refereeing group. And I did everything to be as much as possible the same as my colleagues. So I was wearing the same clothes, like this man's clothes, when this was a time of like the tank top things, where in my case you could look through, kind of. So I was wearing the same clothes. I always had short hair. I was trying to hide in the group of officials. And it took me a while to understand that whatever I'm trying, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like on every group picture of referees, guess what? You can see the difference. And actually, this is my biggest strength. Like I can deal with people from a different perspective. It took me a while to find out. But as soon as I did, I changed kind of my mentality. Because it's so important that you know about your strengths. You should know what makes you special compared to your friend to your left side or to your right side. What is your biggest strength? Find out and use it in your advantage. There's absolutely no reason why not everybody of you, can make it to the top. If you're working hard, if you're resilient to what comes to you, there's no reason. And working as a team, I truly believe that as a referee, you are as good as your team. You are selling the decision that the 3 or 4 of you gonna make. And sometimes you are, as a referee, you are absolutely blind. You have no idea. But you have trust in the people working with you, who are around you and support you. And you're winning as a team or you're losing as a team. Nobody remembers a good referee when the only goal is scored from an offside position. Nobody. And this is why it's so important to let everybody of the team know what's their effort into the game performance, the team performance. And saying that, and I know we want to have time to interact. The last thing is that this refereeing perspective into my life brought me a lot of experiences, and I have to say a lot of friendships all over the world. And one of my closest friends is Canadian. She's living close here. Caroline Chenard. I met her in 2006, the first time. And since then, we spent every single summer together on one of the tournaments all over the world. And if you're spending that much time in such a competitive environment, you get close. So yeah, I can understand your Copacabana, whatever action. So, saying that, you have amazing officials here in Canada. You have amazing female officials who can guide you the way. You have Caroline living close by. You have Chantal being here today. Like, you can speak to her about like her World Cup experiences, because you have been there in 2015 in France, and you have done amazing, by the way. So you can be so proud of your colleagues. So enjoy the moment, enjoy the teamwork, be proud to be a referee, like support your friends. There are a lot of enemies out there. You don't need enemies in the room, really. So support as much as you can, and thank you for your attention. Joe.
So the hometown boy gets a chance to see you on various occasions, and we've got to fly these celebrities in. So I will do my best to get this done in about 3 to 4 minutes so we can have as much time to give them questions and answers. So I'm just going to tell you this. There are some startling similarities to being a female official and one of color. Startling. So what I can tell you that echoes their statements are this. In the end, people only care about quality. If you can be good enough, you can get there, even if the road there isn't always the kindest. Be a good person isn't just a marching statement. Like, in the end, we make subjective decisions, we go out together, but if you can't be good to somebody else from a nation that you've never met, if I'm a decision maker and I've got to decide between Howard and Bibi, and, well, Howard's off here being uncool to this person because of where they're from, that decision's done. And one thing I'll tell you is that I believe firmly that everybody gets an opportunity. I really do. Just quite often, we don't know it happened. And in this, the digital age, you can't hide, even if you wanted to. So treat every game as if somebody important is watching. Because surely enough, one day, somebody important will be watching, even if you didn't know it happened. I mean, quite honestly, from the assistant referee standpoint, what do we got to do? You got to be good at your own job, and you got to be good enough at their job to know the one time they make a mistake in 95 decisions, and then tell them to fix it fast enough that they can sell it as their own, so that it just flows on and nobody knows it happened. That's when an assistant referee is at their best. And in my case, I didn't actually become a full-time assistant referee until I was 29. So while some will tell you it seems like an easier road, or from Canada, you know, I have a hard time as a referee, maybe I should go as an assistant. There's a lot you need to learn about carrying a whistle in that job to properly do this job. So as funny as it sounds, you have to actually become an accomplished referee before you ever try being an assistant, because now you've got to do their job in an instant. Seems kind of backwards, but that's my formula. And I'm now within my 3 minutes, so here we go.
So before we open the floor, I just want to share a little video. I've got to show this, Joe, because I know it's very famous, but it's a World Cup panel. And for all the great decisions that you made in the World Cups that you went to, and there were some excellent decisions, this demonstrates how to learn from experience, and also it made you worldwide famous. So let's have a quick look at it. It deserves another look, doesn't it? We'll play it again. We'll just. It's 4 years later. He's so happy. He's so happy, Joe, aren't you? Sorry. We'll just look at this one more time. This is start because it's so cool. It's the best thing that happened in Brazil 2014.
Like seriously, and to this day, when everybody came and told me that this had gone on, and I'm like, I'm thinking about the lineup on the field. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And that is the most amount of electronic communications that I have received to this date within a 12-hour span in my life.
Okay, so we've got the videos. I'll throw them in where I think they fit. If you sort of like, if this morning's anything to go by, we could be here till 7 p.m. So we'll try and keep it to time. But yes, I'm sure they do. So Matt, are you moderating this? Have you got the mic?
Thanks again for another amazing session. My question is, yesterday you taught us about eyes warm-up. I never thought of that. What other crazy ideas you've got for us that maybe we don't think of?
Interesting. Yeah, if you weren't down at the field yesterday, we just talked about warming up and your eyes being such an important muscle that I used to warm up before the game just by focusing far and near. And particularly as I get older, I'm finding that quickly focusing is more difficult. So it was something that I tried to warm up. So what are the ideas? There was something I was going to mention in my introduction actually, which slipped my mind about just about the importance of making decisions based on gut feeling. And this is not like a crazy idea, a crazy technique, but what I learned on the World Cup journey was that it's not only enough to make a decision based on what you know. You can't trust your eyes all of the time because you simply, even if you're in the best possible position, if you're doing everything you can to get into the best possible position, sometimes you just don't have the information you need, and you have to trust your feel. You have to, and the best referees, and it's the hardest thing to teach, because I said earlier in the session before, there was a handball situation where you can't tell if it hits the player's arm or not. And I said, don't guess. But I don't like the word guessing, because if you only ever give things that you know 100% has happened, you'll say play on too many times to be successful. You'll miss opportunities to make really good decisions based on the feel that you've got. So I would say, not really an interesting technique, but I would say really trust your instincts. I'm going to share the clip. I think I showed it last year, but I want to share it. It was my last ever game, ever. Brazil against Chile in Belo Horizonte, World Cup 2014. And it's a situation where we've been taught in the build-up, because what we do on these World Cup tournaments, you go through like different seminars as the short list gets narrowed down from whatever it might be. It might be 50 referees down to, and 104 assistants down to eventually 30 maybe, or something like this, and 60 assistants. 25. And it gets narrowed down based on performances in domestic competition and Champions League games and that sort of thing. Eventually, you get the nod. You go down to the tournament, not the day before it starts or a week before it starts, but anywhere between 10 and 14 days before it starts, you're in the market ready to train. And every day you go to the training field and you prepare for the tournament using simulated exercises, players, integrated between physical and technical and that sort of thing. Things that would have never happened in 1990 in Italy or 94 in the USA, even 98 in France. I don't think it was happening. And you go there and you get yourself into tournament mode, and you are taught about being active on the field, think about the next step, always being ahead of the game, like we talked about yesterday. And to be fair to Busaka, when he came in, he emphasised a lot of those messages about, think about the next step. And he came up with certain lines that he had that we would always know were going to come up in the debriefs. Yeah, all these same words, and we used to like tick them off on like a bingo card, and whoever got a line or four corners would win that prize. And if this has been video, hi Massimo. But we would. But he came up with some really good messages that even now I take on board, and about being ahead of the game. One situation in this game in Brazil against Chile, in 51 minutes or so, caught me on my heels. I wasn't thinking ahead. The ball was out wide. I found myself gazing at Marcello or Luis Gustavo, I can't remember who had the ball, and instead of seeing him shaped across the ball, I got caught game watching, and he pinged this ball, diagonal ball over to Hulk, and the centre forward for Brazil, and Hulk brought it down, and I thought to myself, that looks wrong, that feels wrong. There's no way he can have controlled that with his chest. It's impossible. It's dropped like a stone to his foot. He must have used a bit of an arm to bring it down. But I didn't see it. I didn't see the arm. But I sensed it had to be. I was about 85% certain. I looked over to Mike Malarkey, my assistant, my trusty assistant, who's so good at what he does. I thought, he's close by, he'll flag it. I looked over, and Mike was running like this down the line. I thought, oh my God, he doesn't think it's a handball. Oh, no. So suddenly my certainty's gone from 85% down to about 70%. And I thought, well, I'll let Hulk take his shot. He's not very good. He's probably going to miss. So if it goes for a goal kick, I'll give a goal kick. Anyway, he shinned it into the bottom corner. I thought, oh my goodness. Goal or handball? Honestly, almost like, do I trust my gut feeling enough to disallow this goal? Everything in my body and my experience from game after game after game is telling me this has to be handball. But I've not actually seen it. And in the moments that seemed like 5, 6, 7 seconds, probably about 1 second, I was considering whether my gut feeling was enough. 2 or 3 Chilean players instinctively ran towards me, pointing to their arm. And that was enough just to convince me that I wasn't the only fool in the stadium that thought it was handball. And you could say, well, they were Chilean, of course they're going to appeal for handball. But being a referee is about reading play reaction, about reading genuine reaction, identifying when they're trying to fool you and when they are actually giving you the clues that you need to come to the right decision. And on the strength of my gut feeling and their reaction, I disallowed the goal. And Holt looked at me and waved his arm. And I thought his reaction will tell me everything, because if I'm right, he'll sort of like, just gesture. But if I'm wrong, he'll probably turn green and rip his shirt off, and because he'd be angry. And he knew. I could tell he knew it was handball. But there was still a little bit of doubt in my mind, because obviously I'd not seen it. So Brazil went on to win the penalty kicks after the game finished 1-1. And I went down the tunnel after the game and was met by the head of media from the Brazilian FA, who said, can you imagine? Can you imagine? That's all he said, can you imagine? I thought, can you imagine? What he meant was, in my mind, was, can you imagine if we'd have lost this game and you've disallowed a perfectly good goal for handball that wasn't handball, it came off his chest, and you've put us out of the World Cup, and can you imagine you'd have to sleep in the stadium forever? That's what I thought you meant. I got into the locker room, as you do. You get your phone out to find out how you've gone on, and you get your phone out, and if you've done well, you've got dozens of messages, and if you've done badly, you've got one from your mum saying, I still love you. And I looked at that phone, and there was message after message on that phone from people saying, fantastic game, well done, great decision to disallow the goal by your assistant, Mike Malarkey. I said, it was by me. It was by me. He did nothing. But it taught me a lesson. You've got to trust your instincts, and you've got to learn, and you learn from lots and lots of different situations and decisions. And I'll just share that clip with you now from my very final game.
To his right foot and just tossed a simple ball into the box.
Marcelo to Hulk, who has scored. That was clever. Hulk delivers. Redemption for him. Was there a handball? Was there a handball? Chile say there was.
Just give a handball in.
Let's see.
Just give a handball. He's going to book Hulk.
He is too. The play will be pulled back.
He's not happy.
Another huge talking point. The goal is ruled out.
He was nice and calm about it, Howard Webb, and I was watching him. Yes, the celebrations, everybody focused on that, but Howard Webb gave it. Let's have a look here.
What do you think?
Of course he did. Pretty clear. He almost caught it. So trust your instincts. Baby's got something to add.
Yeah, instincts for sure. Like, never ever take a decision against your truly instincts, like against your stomach feeling. You will fail. That's the same. Yeah, that's my experience. Never ever take a decision against your stomach feeling. And coming back to your question, what helps? What else can you do than just running and reading the laws of the game? What me helps, and if you want to share the lineup to the World Cup final, and I can speak over it. What helps me is, like, when I have been appointed with my team to the World Cup final in Germany, in Frankfurt, you know that 50,000 is going to be in the see. As soon as I'm talking, like, I got goosebumps. You have 50,000 people in the stadium, and this game is broadcasted live in 142 countries in the world, and everybody is watching you. And you can be super nervous about that. And you have prepared everything you can. That's the most important. You have to know that you have prepared everything you can to be best on the field as a team on that day, in that moment. That's all you can do. What helps is to think about what challenges you might gonna face. Like, visualization of, like, how does it look like walking to the tunnel, seeing the teams, the ball escort, like the kids escort, the ball carrier. Like, how does it feel to go out there, being the first one touching the grass, lining up, the atmosphere, the noise, how does it smell? Like, who's gonna be there? Like, the key players of the team, like, who are they? Like, who do you have a good connection with? It's not necessarily the captain. So who can you bring on board to get you through these 90 minutes as good as possible? So visualization helps me a lot to get prepared for these challenges.
Thanks. No. And also, just one last thing. When you go into these games, or when you go into any game, or when you're trying to get to the next step promotion-wise or whatever, don't believe the mantra, the best referees are the ones that you don't see. Don't believe it. It's absolutely true when the game lends itself to that sort of approach. But I used to fail a bit in the selection. My worst Premier League seasons were the ones when I was going for selection for the World Cup. My worst ever Premier League season, I was horrible, was sort of like the springtime in 2014. Because I knew I was going to retire. Nobody else knew, but I knew I was going to retire. I knew I'd got the World Cup coming up, and the World Cup selection just before that. And I was horrible. I went in not wanting to make a mistake. I went into games trying not to be notable, trying not to be the story. And I became the story because I went in with that mentality. So the best referees are the referees who are seen and heard when the game needs them to be seen and heard. And by doing your job, which might mean making a huge decision, you don't get talked about because you've done your job. By going in with the other mentality, you set yourself up for failure. I did it far too many times. I mean, I didn't get any big games in April, May, March of 2014 in the Premier League, so I just wasn't good enough. And yet I was doing Champions League semi-finals between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. Unbelievable. I had a freedom overseas that I was strangled at home a little bit. I was thinking too hard. And in the end, that's probably why I finished, because, reputations about being a Man U fan and these sort of things, they weigh heavy on your shoulders when you go into games with Man U, because I know any decision I make, whichever way I give it, is going to be scrutinised as a bias. Trying too hard to prove is not, etc. And even though you're not looking on social media, you don't go to Twitter to find out how good you are. But it eventually it weighs down on your shoulders after you've refereed the team like that 38 times. So don't go into games trying not to be the story, because you'll become the story if you go in with that mentality.
Hello, you've as referees rather, and assistant referees, you've obviously had lots of pre-games. What would you say to maybe the younger crew that is important to cover in a pre-match discussion between both of you, please? It's just a few pointers, not everything that you go through, but more for a youth level, if you don't mind.
If I'm thinking pre-game discussion topics at youth, prepare for what answer do we want, or how do we want it to look when we don't know. Because quite often, a youth referee or youth assistant is going to freeze. It's going to have that moment of, oh my God, I don't know. How are you going to recover from that for the next 2 minutes? Is there anything you can look at each other to try to build each other up? How do you want to deal with mass confrontation? Because in an amateur game, it can happen. Younger officials, how do you want to deal with the parents outside of the field when it becomes too much? Is there a way that the assistant can tell the referee, I've reached my limit? None of these have to do with actually calling fouls or calling offside, but they're all things that I believe you need to discuss and be ready for, so you don't feel like you're on the island. Because typically when you feel like you're on the island and nobody cares, it leads you to not come back the next week.
Yeah, strategy. I think that's like important. Like, what do we do if this happens? And agree on a strategy, how you want to work with each other and how you want to being seen as a team. I don't give Howard the mic.
So this question is for Bibi. You talked about the equality of the female match officials. So when you went to World Cup events, as we've seen in Howard's clip, did they give you more than one bed for your crew?
Sorry, my English is not good enough for that question. No, I don't get it.
You
I
want one bed?
understood. I just it just doesn't think in. Yeah.
So this is a question for Howard. Have you showed that clip to Monty Python?
Howard, in one of the podcasts, and obviously this question is for all of you, but you mentioned that mental toughness is the most important piece for a referee. Could you speak to us? How do we handle a disappointing match where we feel, I messed it up, or what can I do as a referee at grassroots at a high level to make sure that every game I'm at my best?
Yeah. So just on your first point, it is a mental discipline that we're involved in. Of all the things that you need as an attribute to be a successful referee, you need to be fit, and you need to be decisive, and you need to be, focused, and you need to be, good at keeping concentration, and all those things, of course. But you need self-belief running right through you, and be mentally resilient. And when you think about it, it makes sense, because what players are trying to do every single game is trying to make you make a mistake. A ball will go off a defender out for a corner, and the first thing they do is appeal for a goal kick. They know it's not a goal kick, but they're trying to make you make a mistake. And then when you do make a mistake, they go crazy at you. How weird. You need to be really mentally strong so that what you believe is what you do and what you follow, and instill that self-belief throughout your team as well. So how do you keep that self-belief? I think setting expectations before each season is important. I think understanding that errors are inevitable, even though we don't focus on them, and before, we don't try to attract them our way. Understanding that errors will happen, then you're more likely to behave in a proportionate way when they do. You don't panic. Nothing is going to kill you. everybody makes errors. I made lots of crazy errors. I made decisions that I thought would kill my career, and it never did. I remember standing in the shower after a game, or numerous times after a game, and the water would be running down onto my head, and I'd be facing the wall thinking, I don't want to go outside the locker room. I don't know what I'm going to face. I don't know the fallout from this performance or from this decision. That's why, okay, I know VAR is controversial in many ways, and it's still bedding in, but I love the fact that we can give officials going into games. I know it's not at grassroots level, but at the level that I work at, we can give officials going into games the confidence to know that they are not or extremely unlikely to make a career-defining error. There's not many of them. I made mistakes that none of them were, maybe one was a bit career-defining with Day Young. But none killed my career. Even after missing the clearest red card ever in the World Cup final, I still went on to referee in the next World Cup final. So mistakes happen, you know. I think people have seen that now with the advent of VAR. They're actually missing the human element of refereeing, aren't they? Oh, we quite miss you making mistakes. You know, it's so bizarre. They don't mind human beings taking charge of games. They just want to cut out those really clear, obvious ones that change match results. So going into games knowing that you're probably not, you're going to make mistakes, but they're not going to kill you. You're just going to learn from them. You're going to get better from them. I think helps you stay confident in the moment. Understanding you're going to have difficult games. Understanding you're going to have games like I talked about earlier. Everton against Bolton Wanderers, November 2004, horrible game, unbelievably difficult place to referees, Everton. I'm surrounded by experienced pros who are trying to bully me, and they were succeeding, and I started to hide after about 20 minutes because it was tough, and I didn't want to be there. And the captain, Gary Speed, came up to me at Bolton and said, "You're letting us down, you're not doing your job." And I said, "Don't be daft." But I knew exactly what he meant because he was spot on. I wasn't doing my job. I've been sent there to do a job, and I wasn't doing it because it was hard. And the game was a disaster. I mean, really. And I look back on that game afterwards, went through it with a fine-tooth comb for about 4 hours. And, for the first 20 minutes, I wasn't too bad, really. Wasn't too bad. I was horrible after I started to hide. So, going into games, knowing that you're going to have those situations, I think makes you prepare better. And I kind of got better at dealing with things because I knew I'd been around the block. And I'd seen that, I'll make errors. Not that I like it, not that I'm comfortable with it, but it was an inevitability. It helped me deal with that. And then also just finding, sports psychology is not for everybody, but finding somebody that you can speak to who you trust, who's got your best interests at heart. It's probably the same person that you want to text first when you come off your game to tell them it's gone well. Because that's what we do it for, don't we? We come off a game and we get our phone out and we can't wait to text somebody to tell them how well the game's gone. They're the people we're doing it for, aren't we? The ones we want to make proud. When you get a local final, when you get promoted, when you go to whatever the game might be, and they're watching you and willing you on, and they've supported you throughout the week, throughout the season, throughout your lifetime, they're the ones you want to do well for. Having conversations about the way things are going, opening up about that, taking somebody with you to games, videoing yourself doing games, really important. Because it always looks better than it feels.
Thank you all for your great insight here. Bibi, I just have a couple of questions. First of all, what was it like for you when you first, Joe mentioned being on an island. I can't imagine any more of an island than you walking out to a high-level professional men's game. What was that experience like for you? How did the men react? But then also, do you have any suggestions or strategies that we might be able to take away to encourage our female referees to continue to develop and push themselves to the next level?
Don't hide. And if you're the one with a ponytail, don't hide. You cannot hide it anyway, so get the best out of it. Like looking for your strengths. What can you do best? What makes you standing out? What makes you different to all the other people? I think that's like one thing which can help. And turning, like mentally, turning the pressure which is on you to a positive thing. Before I did my first ever, let's say, Bundesliga game, I worked 22 years in refereeing to get to that stage. That was my goal. I wanted to kick off or to blow the kickoff whistle for a Bundesliga match. That was my goal. And it was a long journey, and it was like hard work to get there, and I have done many mistakes, and I also had like many decisions where I was really lucky. They could have gone wrong, but I was lucky in that situation. So I think it's good to analyze your mistakes, but it's also very important to analyze the moments where you have been lucky. So what can you learn from that? And to change the pressure you have, because like there's so many people supporting you throughout your way, and they all have expectations as soon as you're on the field. And you want to make them proud. You want to make them believe that their decision to promote you, to appoint you for that game, was the correct decision to do. So when I was in Berlin on my first ever game, and Howard was there as well, which was nice, at least I had one supporter in the stadium. But there have been like a few other people, like the chairman of the referee committee, like our president of the federation. I don't know how many Bundesliga games he normally attends, but like it felt like the whole female refereeing world has been on my shoulders. Because you know exactly if this game is going crazy, the number of possibilities for other females officials coming along the way are limited. So you're not only perform for yourself, you perform for the group of people you are representing there. And for me, it hasn't felt like pressure. It didn't feel like pressure. It was more like, I have worked 22 years to get here. I worked really hard. And I deserve that whistle to be here on that day. And I have so many people in the background who are supporting me, who want me to do well, that it felt like now these are like my 90 minutes to shine. And finally, I can show the world what I'm capable to do. And with this like positive feeling and with this positive strength, the moment I walked out there, I thought, this is my field of play. And the ball on this day was like huge. And I felt probably as confident as I haven't felt that often in my career. So I think that the mental strategy of like how to deal with things helps a lot.
Did you, honest answer, did you feel the weight of pressure? I know you said probably you didn't think about it, but it's hard to believe that you didn't think about the weight of pressure that was on your shoulders, because if that game goes badly, Hertha Berlin against Werder Bremen in the men's Bundesliga, the first female to referee in a top European league ever, that door would probably be closed for some time if that game doesn't go well. That must have crossed your mind for the females who are following through?
Of course it has crossed my mind. Of course it has. And I want to open the door even more for other females coming through. And it happens now because other countries see that it's not a question of gender. It's a question of quality. And if you can do it, like, why can you not promote females into the game? This is the beauty of our game, like how diverse, like there's a lot of diversity into the game, and that's what makes the beauty of it. So, yeah, of course it has crossed my mind, but if I put the weight of the world on my shoulders, do you think that makes me a better performer? I don't think so. So, like, focus on the main things, like focus on what your work should look like on your job, and just don't think about like all this 190 countries broadcasting that stuff live. I mean, Hertha Berlin versus Werder Bremen, with all respect to the teams, that's not a cracker, right?
So this question's for Joe. Sorry, I have to make you speak, Joe.
I was trying to get by on this.
Joe, I find it completely fascinating that you had the success that you've had as a Canadian in this I call it industry or the refereeing world. You know, it's kind of like a hockey player. Hockey players are generally going to be successful as a Canadian in the world, but these two, you know, come from soccer nations, soccer powerhouse countries. For you, I'm very interested to know, at that moment you were selected, you know, you've built your way up. What were you doing? What were you thinking? Who were you with? And when you did arrive, so it's kind of two-part, when you did arrive to that first World Cup, right, that first moment, how were you greeted as a Canadian? Like, did they show up with hockey sticks for you? Or, like, I mean, I'm just curious to understand who you were with, who you celebrated with, how it went, and then when you arrived, how you were received.
Okay. When I first heard the news of the first World Cup, I was asleep. Jeff Gamble, one of my best friends, he called, woke me up. He's like, "So you heard the news?" "What?" He goes, "What? You heard the news?" "No." "All right, go check your phone and then call me back." And then he's hung up. I'm like, all right, obviously something important's happened. So that's how I kind of got a clue tipped off. Called my teammates, and yeah, so I was excited. A Canadian in this world, when you're not from what's considered a superpower in world football, I've got bad news for everybody in the room. You have to be better than average to be considered equal. So if we take a laws of the game test or a video quiz, I've got to get 90 or 100. They can get 70. We'll be considered equal. Just the reality. I go out on a fitness test. I can't get beat by anybody. I go out and do practical exercises. I can't necessarily let my level slip. Yes, you can have a joke, and yes, you can be yourself. Be the person you are. But when it's time to execute, when it's game day, when we're on, I have to be on point, period. My tolerance, my room for error is this. They get a little more, I get a little less, and that's the reality. Ladies in the room, BB's nice and not going to say it. When you cross over and you do a men's match, especially in your formative grassroots years, it will be the most difficult part of your career, flat out. But if you can survive that, you can be her. Because you explained to me how a girl from Saskatchewan was at the Women's World Cup last year when supposedly the level of soccer in Saskatchewan isn't the same as it is in Ontario, in BC, in Alberta, or in Quebec. Does that matter? No. You make the most of what you have where you live. So I don't want to hear I live in Thunder Bay. I don't want to hear I only live in Ottawa. I don't really care if you're only in Windsor. And they say the football, you don't have soccer, that's available. No. You control everything you control. And somehow, some way, when people recognize that, geez, I never see this person skip a beat, your chance comes. How was I accepted by everybody? Soon as I proved that I was at least everybody's equal or better, you just become one of the gang. And then all of a sudden, you can be respected for all the things you are and do. Because I'm a bit of a different personality. I get that. Coming through the system, and there are people in this room who can attest to it, I was not everybody's favorite person. Not even close. It may have taken somebody from outside of Canada to go, wow, that guy's really good. When's he going on the list? For other people to go, oh, geez, here we go. And then that opportunity hit. I didn't know that was happening on the day. And little did I know that those same people who probably were a little hard on me, they're also the same people who appointed me to that game so I could be seen. So as much as everybody wants to cry about politics or something of that nature, start with the mirror and start with you. And then let everything go from there.
We all accepted very quickly that Joe's quality was so obvious. I mean, one of the half a dozen outstanding assistants that have walked on this earth, in my opinion, that I've been lucky enough to work with. This is your favourite decision, Joe, isn't it, from your World Cup journey, 2 World Cups? Do you want to just talk about why?
So, aside from the fact that, yes, I gotta have the mic. So this decision is one of my favorites, and not so much for the fact that it's correct. It's very nice. Oops. Should I actually let it play through? There are a couple of things in this decision which I use as teaching material, which is what I really like. And this is pre-VAR. So I like the fact that if you're an assistant and you're in the professional game, you call offside, especially if you're AR2, Camera's on you and you know it. Things you don't want to do. Oh, man, I'm not so sure. Touching your face. I'm dead serious. You don't want to miss a beat. You want to look like, yes, I'm right. Of course I'm right. And somebody in the crowd asked about how do you deal with people when they come at you and like a tactic. Here's a tactic. Expect somebody to disagree with you. What? Half the people are going to disagree with you half the time? Then you should be ready for 25% of your decisions, maybe nobody says anything, and every other time somebody's coming. So have your witty response ready, but just know that I'm uncategorically correct. And until I work in a game with VAR and you can prove otherwise, too bad, I'm right. So this decision I like because of the work I did to be in the right position before that pass happens. The fact that I know I came. Penalty area movement. You're going to be hearing a lot of that because of this job that I now took on with this person. So when you hear about instructions to assistants regarding the movement that happened in this clip, that's what I like the most about it. And I can't remember whatever your last part of your question was, dude. It was a four-parter and you lost it. No hockey sticks.
Joe, I have another question for you. Can you explain the importance of physical fitness for a match official and how it's important to be physically fit all year long, instead of just being physically fit in the summer for like summer season?
Okay, so what he's trying to say, but nicely, is that if you are just training to pass the fitness test, don't expect to sit in either of their chairs. It's just a fact. The game is a whole lot faster than anybody who preceded you ever had to work with. So passing the fitness test, honestly, it was the 25th or 26th hardest workout on my agenda. It was a joke. I went to Costa Rica and ran a fitness test. Actually, Chantal was there, and she wanted to punch me for this, but I ran with the guys optionally because I had passed the fitness test at a World Cup seminar, but I went to the Elite AR course, and I ran with the guys. A couple of them are huffing and puffing and doing their best to get through, and I'm literally joking around, ran backwards for part of an interval, just because this is a training session. It shouldn't be where I need to peak. If your standard is 15:20, run it at 15:15. There's your training standard, something you can do. Those 5 seconds, you need them for bad weather. I landed and got 4 hours of sleep. I'm sick, because you get one shot when you leave home. And guess what? Canadians, when you fail, they don't say, Joe Fletcher was terrible. They say the Canadian failed. And that affects every Canadian that you follow. Ladies, same drill. You do bad somewhere, they're going to say, oh, all the female officials couldn't cut this. But the day you do well, works in reverse too. Helps you, the person, helps you, the gender, helps you, the ethnicity, it helps you, the Canadian. And then, you can take your steps on from there.
And unfortunately, for the sake of time, that's where we'll end. Luis monopolized the last question, reinforcing his fitness department aspects. But I think, Luis, you have a little token of appreciation for our panelists. But let's thank them for their time and their feedback.